Hi and welcome to this video. You may be wondering by the title, what do I mean by experience doesn't matter? The truth is experience is subjective. So let's break it down now. Let's say someone has 5 years experience, right? 5 years experience with a tool, let's pick Docker. And they've spent 5 years only doing one thing with it. And that is building images. They're not creating the Docker files. They're not doing any code like that. All they're doing is Docker, image, build, and something, right? It's a bit of a bad example, but it's kind of what we're going with here. They're doing the same thing over and over again. Let's call this engineer John. So we've got engineer John who spent 5 years only building Docker images, and here we've got Kate. So we've got Kate here who's now creating the Docker images, writing the Docker files, pushing them up to registries, configuring the registries, and now looking into Kubernetes, so now using those images, setting up different policies, deploying clusters, but now has 6 months experience doing that. Now, let's look on paper here, right? John looks really good. He's got 5 years experience with Docker. Now, if you really drill down and now you were to interview John, how do you think he's going to do? Hey, John, how do I push an image up to a registry? Oh, I don't know. I'll just build it. John, you've got a Docker file. How do I do this? Oh, I just don't know. You ask Kate, on the other hand, who's only got 6 months experience. Yep, you pushed up, Docker image push, right? You want to create a Docker file. What instruction do we want to use? Copy versus add. Command versus entry point, like straight away on point, knows the answers. And this is what I mean by experience doesn't matter, because look at the point here, right? You could be John with 5 years experience, which doesn't count at all, right? You've done the same thing over and over again. You've got Kate on the other hand, who's got 6 months experience, but like already has been working with Kubernetes and setting all this stuff up in Docker, and is really quite experienced. So you look on paper now, and actually they're completely different. The key thing to take away from this when it comes to actually putting your experience is, one, never undersell your achievements. If you've done something big and noteworthy, don't try and downplay it. Look on LinkedIn. You see these like humble brags of these posts about, some guy, I saw someone here and I gave him the day off and look, now they're a multi-millionaire. You see that crap all the time, right? Bolster it up a bit. Don't go over the top, right? If you deployed a Kubernetes cluster in, say, a test environment, you might want to spin it around into a non-production environment. But don't try and sell it as, we set up like multi-regional production-ready setup, because that's what you didn't do, right? You don't try and BS someone on that. But on the other hand, don't undersell it. Don't say, deployed cluster or deployed small cluster into non-important environment. Like, no, you've done something. You tell everyone. Because as the phrase goes, right? I heard this one a lot and I liked it. Take 100% of the fame because you'll take 100% of the blame. Meaning that if you set something up, and someone says, hey, you did a really good job on that, accept it. Because when it goes wrong, and they think that as well, your ass is on the line. They're going to come after you. The next thing with experience is you're going to put it in your CV, right? Let's say you've got a job as DevOps engineer for 6 months. Apply for the jobs anyway. If they want 2 to 3 years experience and you've got like 6 months, maybe a year, apply for that role anyway. If you've got the experience to back it up, because again, experience is subjective. You've come along 3 months, right? And you've set up CI/CD platforms, you've got Docker, you've reconfigured, you've streamlined it, you've been on my Docker course and learned like the imaging best practices, and like you're an absolute expert at like reducing file sizes. Like, look, right now I'm on fire, like I'm going straight away, like look at this sort of stuff you could do. You could talk about streamlining, you could optimizing it, reduce storage. Like if you found out you reduced the storage by like 20% in a week, and like, okay, now how much does that save the business? Well, it saved them $100,000. Man, that looks awesome. You could put it on there. Like, I'm getting passionate about this because I've applied to roles, didn't really have the experience level for it, still got the job because why? I could talk about it. Yeah, I may not have had 3 years worth of experience, but I had experience in the areas they needed. And that's the thing to kind of drill down. Now, with all my courses, I try and make them very relevant to what's used in industry. In fact, that is the key point of them. They are relevant to what is used in industry. I don't want to waste your time on like fancy PowerPoint graphics and cool theoretical concepts. Like, you're going to know this stuff when you go in there. So something like that, we talked about like reducing the image size. That's massive, right? You can show cost saving, you can show initiative with that. You've got a lot of experience just by doing that. Always stay learning, keep getting certified. That helps sometimes bridge that gap when it comes to experience. It's also really kind of annoying sometimes when you get the HR gatekeepers and they're like, well, you're not certified, we don't want you. I always recommend at a minimum AWS Certified Solutions Architect, because by far it is the best cert, I think, for DevOps, right? Because nearly everyone needs it. Unless you're not working with AWS, then I would say do the respective equivalent for Azure and Google Cloud. If you then had to, I'm not going to use the word fake, but let's say, okay, I need to get some experience with Docker. Is there any way you can incorporate it where you are? Could you set up some sort of test environment? Could you demo it? Like, how can you bolster it up? First things first, check out the links below so you can go ahead and see my courses. Check out Docker, maybe Kubernetes, see how you can use them. Now what can you do? Well, let's see if you can work with the testers or the developers, start introducing Docker. Even if it doesn't get very far, right? The fact you take an initiative, look how you can implement it in the business is massive, because now that sounds really cool. When you go to a business, well, how much experience have you got with Docker? Well, I worked with it for 3 months and I was trying to bring it into my business, and I go, wow, why was that? Well, the problem we were trying to solve was, and you might say, right, it may have been an issue, but the developers were building on their machine, and let's say, there's always that famous phrase, it works on my machine, but now it doesn't work on yours, it must be your fault. So you say, man, that's the problem we were trying to eliminate. We wanted to standardize the build environment. You've got a really good business case there. So, well, look, this is what we've done, this is what we've implemented, you've got that knowledge, you've got that experience. It sounds really good as well. So bridge it. And then what you can do as well, if you're a bit like, oh, I think I'm a bit patchy on this, have a look at doing a certification. Now, in this case, you've got the Docker cert. And I believe they've changed this recently. I will need to double check this before I say this. It used to be, it was like really focused on Docker Swarm, but they've now changed it to focus on Kubernetes. And look, when I did my Docker training for the Docker accredited consultant, it was quite funny because they turned around and they focused on Swarm, but even the instructors were like, yeah, no one really uses Docker Swarm, so learn Kubernetes instead. And like half the course was dedicated to Kubernetes. Both worth looking into, but definitely a bit of Docker, bit of Kubernetes, and that is going to put you in a really strong position. So yeah, now you've got the certification, you might have Docker cert, and now this is a way of validating your experience. And now also as well, if you start getting those interview questions like, hey, how do I do this in Docker? Then you're going to be able to explain it because you've learned that for your certification. So it's all about managing that expectation around experience, because definitely apply for that role. If it says you need 3 years experience and you've got 1, apply for it anyway, because when you actually find out what they need and you're confident in your answers, you are going to succeed. You are going to do well in that role. Apply for it because experience is subjective. It's what you've done. If you haven't got any experience, find a way of getting it. Maybe it's interning, even watching tutorials. Back in my apprenticeship days, we had to do A+ certifications, and one of them was about building a PC. Now, this probably sounds really straightforward, right? If you have done it before, then you know it's plugging in some wires and some stuff and like what the different parts are. It's easy enough. Now, what happened here is our engineers are like, hey, I've only got a laptop, I haven't got a PC. So this instructor is really cool. He just turned around and said, well, go watch a YouTube video, right? At the bare minimum, that can be your experience, right? Learn from someone else. Even watching a tutorial was enough to say, hey, I can tell you what the CPU looks like when I plug it into the motherboard. And then this is how I want to put in the motherboard. Make sure I wear my ears. Just stuff like that, right? That is how you can also gain experience. Have a go at doing it outside of work. Have a go at setting up your own Kubernetes cluster. I'll show you my course, the Kubernetes course. We'll show you how to deploy it onto AWS. Learn about it, because even then, that's good experience. You're learning. But the best thing to do is see how you can implement it at your current workplace. And again, if all else fails, see if there's somewhere else that can give you that knowledge you need and to get that experience. That wraps up this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.